Hey guys, welcome to the Collective Mindset Podcast. I'm Jordan Hodges.
Gavin.
This is Gavin. We're excited to be with you today. We want to talk about today about 3 steps to completely change anything in your life. Gavin, hit us off, man.
I love it, dude. Anything. I believe you can change anything you don't like about what's going on in your life. It is 100% possible. I listened to a podcast by Rob Dyrdek yesterday. He was talking about being self-aware. So for me, I think step 1 to changing your life is you have to be self-aware. You have to be able to evaluate yourself honestly where you're at. Where am I at right now? Step 1, where am I at?
Yeah, you've got to recognize if you have a problem or you have an area that you want to improve. I guess that we're not sitting there thinking like, hey, you've got this crazy problem, you got to get over it. And maybe that's you, but it's more kind of like, are you just average? And are you tired of being just average and want to do something different? Like,
Yeah,
to me, like,
but it could just be...
What do I need to improve on? Right?
But even if you're awesome at something and you want to be great, you want to be the greatest, whatever it is, you have to know where you're at right now.
Yeah.
Kind of step 1A is being self-aware of where you're at. Step 1B would be you have to be able to envision, you have to be able to see where you want to go. What does the person you're trying to be or the change you're trying to make, what does that person look like? What does that person walk like? What do they talk like? What do they eat for breakfast? Like, you have to know that person post-change in and out. They are your most intimate partner, that person you want to be. That is the change, and that is the level of self-awareness that I think you have to have.
Yeah,
So
let me talk about, so we had, we have a little mini book club going on between us for this year.
Yeah.
But earlier in the year, we both listened to Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, yeah.
If you have not read that book or listened to it or watched any of his content, I suggest you do. It's great. But one of the things he talks about is how everything that we are and we become, we create in our mind first. And part of trying to become excellent in a certain area of your life, you've got to be able to vision in your mind and in your thoughts, like, what is that going to look like? How am I going to feel when I am this? How am I going to act? How am I going to be perceived?
Mm-hmm.
And you allow your mind to create this image. And I think that's what's so key with what Gavin's saying. It's like, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
It's like, what if it's fitness? Like, what does it feel like if I'm physically fit and I'm able to do this? How do my clothes fit? How do I feel when I walk into a room? And you do those kind of exercises in your mind, and you start to program your mind so your mind believes that that's the reality.
Yeah. It's connecting those two things, right? Where am I at, and what does that future self look like, right? So that's all encompassed in step 1 is being self-aware. You have to be able to do that. So, and do it honestly. You might need help from other people, but do it honestly. So when you know where you're at and you know where you want to go, you now have a gap, right? You've got a range. Here you are, there you want to be. You have a delta. You've got a lack, right? You've got something. You have to move from here to there. So whether you're walking, whether you're building a ladder and going up, whether you're driving, right? There are steps, there are miles, there are rungs. And you have to be able to know what those are. You have to be able to identify what are the steps. What do I have to do to get myself from where I'm at, which I am fully aware of, to where I want to go, which I can fully envision? And you got to write them down. You got to break it down. Like, what does that person eat for breakfast? What time does that person wake up in the morning? Like, how does he walk down the street, and when he sees someone, like, does he wave or does he not wave? Like, you have to know that person. You have to know those measurable steps to get there. Like, what is the difference? And write them down, as many as there are. It could be as simple as 3 things to become a person who can wake up earlier, or it could be 100 things, like, how do I become a billionaire?
Well, I think
there might be a lot of steps to that.
Yeah, I think it's funny. A lot of these guys, is that you follow that are inspirational characters. Like, when they start getting into their personal habits and what they've done, most of them, it's like, oh yeah, I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. I meditate for 30 minutes. I then go to the gym, I work out, and then I come home, I eat this breakfast, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
and then I read these blogs and I do these things, and it's like they have this structured life of what they've done to then go on and accomplish their great things. I hear guys talk about how they break up their day. Probably one of the ones I like the most, and Lewis Howes just touched on this recently, but it's like breaking your day into 8-hour segments. Like you have 8 hours that is going to be dedicated for work and your business. You have 8 hours that's going to be dedicated to sleep. And then you have 8 hours that's dedicated to your family and your personal interest and hobbies. And then figure out how to maximize those times. But then that's how you structure your day, and you break it up into these 8 hours. But I love it that you got to write down these steps. You got to have a game plan. You got to have something that you're looking at and saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do to change. Like if you don't map it out and you don't say, okay, what do I got to do to accomplish these things to make these changes? It's going to be really difficult.
Yeah. It's your plan might change. It might adjust as you move through all of these things, but you have to start somewhere. You gotta have the plan. You've got to have those steps. You've got to know, like, here are the things in my mind I'm lacking to accomplish what I want to accomplish. This last one is going to sound really crazy. So I'm going to say the end before I say the beginning, right? So however many steps you wrote down, right? 1 to 100. Let's say there's 100 steps. I want you to absolutely forget 99 of them. Forget them. And you're going to look at that first one. You're going to see what it is. What's it going to look like, feel like, act like to do step 1? And you got to be willing to do it. You've got to start. Whatever step 1 is. If you need to make step 1, after I've said all this, you need to make step 1 smaller so you feel better about doing it, do it. Break step 1 down into smaller steps. But whatever it is, be willing to start with step 1 and start moving forward. And every day, you might need to do that, just step 1 for a week. All you can do is step 1. Eventually, step 1, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a year, but eventually step 1 becomes, it's just your SOP, right? It's a standard operating procedure. Every day, I do this thing. Now go to step 2, and then 3, and then 4, and on and on and on. And if you do that, you get to end up like these super successful people, right? Who they look like they do everything, bro. Like they get up, they work out, they meditate, they spend time with their family, they measure themselves and score themselves for 6 years straight, like Rob Dyrdek. Like that dude's crazy. Yeah. He's given himself a daily score in like 12 categories for 7 years. And you ask him like, hey, Rob, how was your February 2022? And he's like, let me flip back and see. Well, I was doing real well with my family life, not so great with my fitness. I wasn't eating real. Like, he'll know. He'll tell you.
Yeah.
He didn't start that way, dude. He started like this.
Yeah.
And he might have started it when he was 11 years old and he was, didn't do it consciously. He just was wired that way. But some of us have to do it a little more consciously, with a little more intentionality. But the process is the same nonetheless. And as you do those things, you stack those wins. That step 1 turns into 2, and on and on and on. And there is no stopping you. And you might adjust your plan along the way, or your goal might adjust along the way. But there's no way you can be stopped following this formula.
Yeah, I like that. I think so. If I could give an example real quick. Gavin and I spent a lot of last year writing down on the whiteboards and kind of talking about what we wanted to do in creating this mortgage company. And then when we finally came up with the idea and that we wanted to do it, all that kind of stuff, like I had my intentions of like, what was this business going to be? What does the game plan look like? And we wrote it down and I put it on the wall in my office. And every single day when I come into the office, I go through and I recite those 6 intentions of who I am, what I want to do, what I want to accomplish, and where am I going. And it allows me to keep kind of my compass directed in the direction I want to go. So I think that's one, real key thing in this is that keep yourself focused as you're trying to accomplish these things. Have the faith and the courage to go through and execute on it. But if it's not something that's laid out in front of you, write it down. Get it in front of you. Have it something that you review often, because change is hard. It's difficult.
Yeah.
you've got to gain a little bit of confidence. And I love that Gavin's saying do one thing at a time, because if you go out there and you say, I got to do all these 100 things, there's no way you're going to do them. But if you can make one promise to yourself, think of it as a covenant that you're making with yourself, and then you keep that covenant with yourself for 1 week straight. Every single day, it's a non-negotiable, you do it. Man, you're going to gain a lot of self-confidence in yourself by keeping that promise that you made to yourself. And there are things like, man, I got to a point where I was like fully addicted to soda. I would be driving home from work and I'd be like, I didn't go get my Sip and Save free soda today. I'm pulling in a Circle K, I'm going to get it. And I'm like, I don't need this. What am I doing? But it was like I was addicted, and I got to the point where I didn't feel like I could stop. I finally made the decision. In January, I was going to stop, and in February, I think February 10th, you guys, was the last soda I actually drank. And so, like, I'm soda sober for what? It's like 4 months.
4 months under your belt, man. Get this man a chip.
I have no desire for it. But it's like cool. Like, that was one of the little small promises I made to myself.
Yeah.
Right. But depending on whatever your goal is, whether it's to write a book, to become physically fit so that you can play in the, with your kids or your grandkids, like I have a goal that, like, when I'm in my 50s and I have grandkids, like, I want to be able to go on hikes with those kids. I want to be able to get on the floor and roll around and wrestle with them. I want to be able to do all the things that I've done as a dad and still feel like I'm capable of doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to roll over and just sit in the chair and be like, I can't do anything.
Yeah. Those are awesome intentions. And I think, just like you said, right? Like, as you put those words in front of you every day, you recite them, they become part of your vocabulary. Your mind just naturally is attracted to the things that are going to help you accomplish that. So, as you go throughout your day, you've got these goals held in your mind, you're starting to recognize opportunities, you're starting to recognize motivators, you're starting to recognize what gives me energy, what takes energy from me, how can I do what I'm trying to accomplish better and with more intentionality and more purpose and just more success. So I love all that. I'm really excited about kind of everything we're doing here, but this to me is some of the best information, and whether you take all of this or just some parts of it, this is the best information you could have right now, because with this, you can pretty much go out there and change any part about your life that you aren't enjoying. And no one has to tell you what you can or can't do. Block it all out, put it all down, find what your step one is and where you want to go, and just start.
Yeah.
No one can tell you can't. So
just start. I think, the reason why Gavin and I decided to do this podcast, and we talk about this, is that, we wanted to hold ourselves accountable to what we're trying to do with this business and with our life and our journey. We really focus in on the 4 F's. If you haven't seen that episode, go back and watch that, because we really believe strongly that the 4 pillars of a well-balanced life is your faith, your family, your fitness, and your finances. And so as you think about your life and, like, how do you want to change in some way, maybe it's one of those 4 topics, but you've got to be aware of, like, man, I'm really lacking in my family relationships. So what can you do? You got to be willing to do something. Write some steps down. Start making changes. Maybe it's, I'm going to spend 15 minutes every single day solo with each one of my kids so that they can feel like I know that they're there. I see them. I love them. I care about them. Just start making changes. But for those of you who are looking to start a new business, like, holy cow, you got to map it out. You've got to do the step 1 here that Gavin's talking about. Self-awareness there is like, okay, where am I lacking in education or understanding? Yeah. And then you got to start consuming or consulting with people that know what they're doing to be able to go out and understand how to start a business. I mean, some businesses are super simple. If it's a landscape business, not that hard. Mortgage business, fairly difficult. There's a lot of licensing requirements, government regulations, yada, 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 you can go on. But there's got to be some intentionality behind what you're doing, and it starts with being aware of where you lack, and then writing down the goals, and then visualizing what it's going to be like, and then really just going out and executing it. And that's what we're doing. We're in the process of execution. Do we have, of our 100 things, Gavin? I mean, I would say we're probably still in the teens of the list of 100s that we're trying to accomplish. Yeah. So we're grateful that we're at this step, right? Honestly.
But we started with 1. We started with step 1.
We started with
and that's where everyone's going to start. But build on those things. hopefully this was helpful for you guys. You know, a lot of people probably do these things unconscious, you know, subconsciously. They just kind of naturally have these ideas in their head. But I like breaking them down. I kind of like putting words and labels and processes to things. So I think I find this super helpful. Hopefully you guys do too. Wherever you're listening to this, we hope you like it, share it, follow us for more. But yeah, appreciate you guys following.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.